a professor of psychology who became something of a mentor to me, and we'd stayed in touch. He was good friends with Howard Dean, who'd run for the Democrat nomination for US president in 2004. Dean hadn't won, but his use of internet fundraising and grassroots organization was hugely influential. Aware of my political interests, David had mentioned to me that Howard had once told him that it was much better to be a governor in American politics than a senator. Put simply, you got to make things happen and make your mark. David continued, I think it would be a better fit for you. You'd find executive politics more fulfilling than legislative politics. I think you'd enjoy it more. His intervention stuck in my mind, even after I returned to the UK. And when Labour declared that the selection for Bristol West would be an all-women shortlist, it seemed to rule out any opportunity for me to represent the place where I grew up. But when the possibility of Bristol having a directly elected mayor came up, and with Marg's encouragement, it felt as though the stars had realigned. I took part in the Yes campaign during the referendum, not as a player, but by helping and handing out leaflets. On one particularly embarrassing afternoon, I agreed to be driven around the streets of Clifton with a megaphone to urge people to vote yes. I crouched as low as I could with just the speaker poking out of the open window to try to maintain my anonymity. Cameron's plans were ambitious but never fully came to fruition. He talked of creating a cabinet of mayors across the UK who would meet twice a year under his chairmanship. Tapping into the ability of cities to deliver and boost the economy was the right idea. The problem with his scheme was that out of the 10 cities holding a referendum, there would only be one city who voted for a directly elected mayor, my own. On a turnout of 24%, the Yes campaign would win by 53% to 47%. That day at the Marriott, the potential candidates were jockeying for position. George Ferguson, a local architect and businessman, notable for his trademark red trousers, was there. He was a former Liberal councillor and parliamentary candidate, but was planning to stand as an independent. Also present were Liberal Democrats, Conservatives, and the other potential Labour nominees. They were all far more experienced politicians than me, both current and former councillors, already busy with their own campaigns, resources, and teams. I was all too aware of the views people in that room would likely have of me. To be honest, I carried those same perceptions within my own insecurities, but I also carried a belief that I had something to offer the city and the role. I had David Berg's words ringing in my ears, and similar encouragement from Deborah Evans, my CEO, and Christina Gray, my manager at the National Health Service, where I was working in public health. My CV, I had to admit, did not make me sound like the standout candidate. I was a health service manager, Band 8. Before that, I'd spent 5 frustrating years as a BBC broadcast journalist. Despite my best efforts, I just couldn't get on in the organisation, and I ended up resigning. I was later told that when it was announced I was standing to be mayor, my candidacy was met with laughter and incredulity among my former colleagues in the BBC Bristol newsroom. As I entered the hotel, my overwhelming feelings were acute self-consciousness and defiance. I felt like an imposter. I knew I didn't belong there, but I was always going to run. From a young age, I have had a peculiar mix of insecurity and self-belief. In a glamorous hotel, among the Prime Minister and his entourage, rival candidates, and the bright lights of the media, I felt like something of an inconvenient and awkward gatecrasher. Although I was certain I would be seen as a nobody when it came to their idea of politics, I knew I could hold my own when it came to understanding Bristol and how the city should be run. But glad-handing and work in a room wasn't something I felt comfortable with, and never have. I took my seat to listen to Cameron's speech. Once the presentations had finished, the jockeying to get an interview with the media began. It was the smart thing for prospective candidates to do, to get yourself an early bit of publicity to push your profile and calls. But all the other candidates had the same idea. When it comes to photographs, I've never mastered, and I haven't sought to master, the skill of pushing my way to the front and centre. I'm often the one at the side. Here, this meant that I was well down the line. With a swish of his red trousers, George Ferguson was quick to offer his opinions to the waiting journalists, who lapped him up in equal measure. My rivals for the Labour nomination were also ahead of me. I joined the queue and waited my turn.